Good morning, Madam Chair of the French Maritime Cluster. You took office last January, and a lot has happened since then. So you worked for a naval group for 23 years. So you were the head of economic development with the states and regions. You worked also on partnerships. You are therefore very knowledgeable about this very particular relation between a company and an association and public authorities. The cluster maritime was established 18 years ago. Can you remind us of its goal? Well, it was established almost 20 years ago. Francis Vallat, at the time, chairman and founder, used to say the maritime world is quite fragmented, and it would be interesting to create a cluster to bring together all players that support and develop marine economy, both on land and at sea. And this is what he did. And today we represent about 400,000 people in 2022, 97 billion euros of production across 10 different sectors. And we tackle very important topics, for instance, taxation on tonnage. And it's very important to be a voice for the marine industry. And what about the MEDEF, the other sector associations? Do you reckon that they were not doing their job? Well, it's a very scattered industry. So at the time, we wanted the professional branch association to be brought together. And this is what Francis Vallat did. And this is very interesting. And all of these branches are very important for one another. With this value chain in the marine industry, it was important to bring additional value. And marine trade today represent 90% of global trade. And France today imports and exports 72% through marine routes. So that's a significant share in our economy, and a lot of our daily life relies on container ships and bulk ships. And we established a roadmap over 20-30 years. So we will discuss your roadmap in a minute. But are you a lobby? We do advocate for the interest of all of our members that are mainly professional federations and major groups in the marine industry. And since our creation, we can make our voice heard towards French authorities as well as European institutions on all of these issues. So it's true that today we need to advocate for these main issues related to social benefits, related to the development of the maritime economy, but also energy transition. All of this requires a lot of investment. And our cluster will be there to support a strength that is developed by the state. So we need to remain competitive, and we are ranking 5th worldwide. So you were just talking about a roadmap over 20-30 years. So this is a much longer span than usually a roadmap, and this applies to various sectors. Could you tell us more about it? Absolutely. Our activities apply to activities on land and at sea. So we work on port infrastructure, shipyards, commerce and military, navy, subsea cables, sea bottoms, and we also work on the planning of the marine space and also cybersecurity. And France has the second biggest marine surface area in the world. So this is an incredible leverage for us in terms of diplomacy and global sovereignty. And the French cluster is based in Paris, and we coordinate also 7 marine clusters in our overseas territories. These are regional clusters in the French West Indies, La Réunion Island, Polynesia, and New Caledonia. So if we go back to these 12 main activities, you mentioned ports and infrastructure. France is not known for having the biggest ports and neither the most competitive ports. Why is that? Well, France is currently improving things. And I would like to thank our port associations because we need to improve our port infrastructure. And today, when you have a container ship that is transporting 24 boxes, so that's an equivalent to many freight trains. And to do that, you need a lot of hoisting equipment. So we need to be able to welcome these big container ships. So for the past years, France has been working to improve the situation. Were we lagging behind? We were. And it requires a lot of money. And as you know, it's not easy to find the money to invest in France. So we might think that a cluster with a lot of private companies could well support that kind of transition. So in order to be able to welcome ships that can be decarbonized in the face of climate change mitigation, we have major programs that are being funded by private players. So when talking about ports, we think of infrastructure, as you mentioned, and in France, we also think of the industrial situation, of the social, labor relations. Well, I would say that people who work in ports have a lot of solidarity with French fleet and French ships, and they show solidarity between one another, and which is not necessarily a good thing for ship owners. Yes, and that's an important point. And here I'd like to draw a parallel with the current news situation. If we have fewer ships bearing a French flag, this marine traffic will go back to Antwerp, Rotterdam, but it will probably be going to other ports in the Eurozone. But that's an important point. Because a ship owner, whether it has a French flag or another flag, will be favoring a French port over another port? Absolutely. In terms of strategy, when you have a ship with a French flag, you will be focusing on France. So whether you own the ship or you are a port player, as we saw during COVID, this spirit of a French sovereignty was there, which is a good thing. And this is how we can have in our fridge, in our house, in our companies, the products that we need every day. And of course, if there's a fleet or a ship that is no longer bearing a French flag, then it's going to be a problem, as I explained, because these ships will go to other ports outside of France. And it will also generate another problem. This can lead to delivery delays. So I think that it is fundamental in terms of sovereignty to have a fleet with a French flag. And what about the taxation framework for this service? It's quite specific with a taxation on tonnage. And there are two main political forces in France that are aiming at this, the Front Populaire and the Rassemblement National. So these parties would like to scrap this favorable taxation system, which could lead to billions of savings. And over the weekend, it was explained that it would be an important risk. And so at a time where the French budget is in a very difficult situation, at a time when every company is looking for favorable taxation systems. Don't you think that it would be better to scrap this system? Don't you think that it's maybe outdated to have that kind of specific system? Well, if you'll allow me, I think that your question could be more accurate. It's true that we've had some important results over the past years in the marine industry. It's true that we've also been impacted by COVID and the war in Ukraine. And many companies experienced delays in deliveries. That's a fact. But to elaborate on your question, I'd like to add that taxation on tonnage, well, Edouard mentioned it this weekend. Well, this taxation on tonnage is a system that the ship owner chooses when they report their activity, and they choose this option for a 10-year period. So they will pay taxes on the basis on the tonnage that they're going to transport. So they have little visibility over the next 10 years. So what I mean is that today, the French state is requiring French companies, including in the marine industry, to work on the decarbonization of the industry. And these decarbonization efforts cost a lot of money. And this money that is used to prepare for this 2030, 2050 transition is coming from private investment from ship owners. And this investment is made on renewable energy infrastructure and ships. So what I mean is that we are not losing anything. Everything is being transformed. And who will pay for the decarbonization of marine transport? If ship owners can no longer afford to do that because of the new taxation system. I understand what you're explaining, but we are really witnessing a revolution similar to what we're seeing in the automotive industry. And automotive players do not have any specific taxation system. Well, then this is becoming an international and European issue. And this is what Edouard explained this weekend. 22 European countries use taxation on tonnage. And outside of Europe, the situation is exactly the same for the main countries in marine transport. So if we scrap this system internationally and at European level, we would remove a competitiveness level for French players. And this taxation on tonnage is a way, to a certain extent, because we're talking about French ships, it is a way to make sure that the cost of carriage is negligible. Also, obviously, this depends on the context, but this taxation on tonnage is a way of retaining some stability in prices. There's some tension, including in the Red Sea. So does it mean that although we're not going to experience the same situation as we did after COVID, but does it mean that this year will be exceptional for ship owners? And if so, do you think that your argument will be difficult to defend? Well, 2024 will not be an exceptional year. We know that at the end of 2023, there was a lot of tension on marine transport, including because of the events in the Red Sea and because of the war in Ukraine. But based on the current indicators, we can see that there is a stabilization of maritime flows and prices. Prices above average or standard average? Standard average. Are you going to fight for this? We will. And in a few hours, I will probably be working with the media. And what's important for us in the cluster is to support one another. Because we have a responsibility towards our families, with our neighbors, on the support of French competitiveness and sovereignty. If we remove taxation on tonnage, we would be removing a sovereignty lever for French flagships. So what about reducing VAT on energy costs? And the idea would be to make up for it by removing this tax. Well, I would say that the time is maybe not the best one to discuss this with all of the stakeholders. But as you can imagine, I will be here to popularize, to explain and demonstrate to all stakeholders why it is important to retain taxation on tonnage. So you haven't met yet with Front Populaire au Rassemblement National? No. So in the various fields of activities that you mentioned earlier, many are related to energy transition and decarbonization. Could you tell us more about the amount of money we're talking about and about the ambitions of the French cluster? So could you tell us more about this ambition and these requirements for the planet? So in terms of employment and in terms of added value for the country, we do have forecasts that relate to an increase of an additional 600,000 jobs in the industry, direct jobs, and new sectors will emerge as well. Because you mentioned AI earlier, augmented AI, including breakthroughs in health and in other fields, as well as safety and security at sea. So this will amount to an increase of 50 billion euros of production by 2030. And on top of that, there are 1,000 jobs for people both on land and at sea. And I would like to take this opportunity to tell you that I also advocate for your professions. You are part of my priorities, including for the training of young and less young professionals. And since I took office, I've been wanting for the youth, right from secondary school, can be aware of the impact of the marine industry, and to be aware of the training opportunities, and to see how they can then be involved in the marine industry in higher education. And regarding subsea cables, this is a very specific activity in France. We are one of the top 3 global leaders with Orange Marine. And this is a very significant challenge. 98% of internet communications go through subsea cables. So France, because of its marine surface area, is really a champion of that. We have 7 ship owners, including one that is part of the global top 4 that are involved in this. And we really have some incredible levers that we can use, and we really want political forces to be aware of it, so that the best decisions are made in the coming weeks. A few words about safety now, about ship safety, of course, but also cyber security. In L'Opinion this morning, an interview was published reminding us that 26 ships were lost in 2023, and there were a lot more in 2022. So we could say that safety is improving. And what is the role of public authorities in this? Well, first of all, we were talking about the foundation of the cluster earlier. And the French Navy wanted to be a member right from the start. So I'm quite concerned by the situation of for the safety of our container ships. And I would like to thank the French Navy for their support. Because, as you said, many ships are stopped, are facing incidents, and a commander and their crew are just there to do their jobs and not to face some unbearable incidents. So, as you said earlier, we are akin to a lobby, but in order to do this lobbying, we need to know what we're talking about. So we have task forces bringing together all stakeholders as well as our members to work on safety. And safety is really one of our core priorities.
So maybe we'll need to give help to the National Navy differently. Between public and private sectors, think about how we can help the Navy get new resources to take action. Have you got anything in mind? Maybe we could imagine. We're always advocating for public-private solidarity. The government won't be able to do everything. This much we know. So maybe private companies should think about having their own means of protection? I don't know. Maybe we could finance security and surveillance means for the Navy. Are you talking about at sea? Well, we could talk about means of communication or drones. We've heard a lot about drones. Yes, when there are drone attacks, but these can be surveillance drones as well. So much equipment that could make the French Navy maybe not more efficient, because they are very efficient, but they could have a wider range of products than they have now. It's difficult to say that I'll need to use a missile against a drone that costs 200-300 euros, maybe 1,000 euros tops. So the balance of power is not the same at all. So I've been talking about it very regularly with some colleagues. and some people around the cluster, and I'm thinking that at some point, I don't know how, because of course this needs to be addressed in other circles, but public-private solidarity, and I'm talking about public-private solidarity, also needs to address this topic, also because the tonnage tax is a form of solidarity. Cybersecurity, what about it? Well, cybersecurity, we've been talking about it, but not enough, I think, for other aspects than threats. Does the threat exist? Well, yes, there have been facts mentioned. Well, yes, of course, but maybe we could look at the work done by the Cyber Maritime Defense Cluster. But, well, yes, you can attack a vessel, as we've said, physically or not, but there can also be e-reputation attacks. It's easy to say that, well, I'll launch a cyber attack on a cruise ship. What for? Well, I'll shut down the AC, for instance. And imagine the impact on the brand name. So with all ship owners, it's the same. Maritime cybersecurity issues, security, safety, decarbonization, training, jobs. Those are so many working groups that we have, and we're working in project mode, as you said. We know where we want to go for the next 30 years, what will be our projects for the next 10 years, and what we are going to finance and co-fund with the government in the next 3 to 4 years. And of course, that also involves cyber issues. In your various areas, there's fisheries and aquaculture. This is something that's been preempted by Brussels. That's causing a lot of discussions and anger here in France amongst fishermen. What can you do to maybe pacify the situation and make the relationship between Paris and Brussels more fruitful? Well, thank you first for talking about fishing, because we were talking about ship decarbonization and ship owners, but I think that fishermen need to renew all of their fleets. All their fleets, their fishing fleets, by 2030, 35 to address their decarbonization requirements. So once again, everything that I've addressed, well, this solidarity will come into play with all players so that at some point we can meet this goal. Talking about Brussels, I took office on the 1st of January. I'm kind of surprised, I have to confess, that France has the second largest maritime footprint in the world, and we're contributing that to the EU. Although we're not as directly involved as Spain or Italy in terms of coastline, but it's amazing that there is no high-quality maritime policy compared to other territories on this planet. So I think that it will be very important before next year to start creating a Team Europe maritime team for diplomacy. Sometimes there are inconsistencies between the text adopted in Brussels and their transposition in France, not just for fisheries. Well, this is fundamental. What about the Minister of the Sea and their prerogatives? Well, I think it's also our job. We can't expect everything from politics. Well, Brussels is about politics. I mean, lobbying is important. It's important to be there and defend your national interests. Is it done badly? Well, I think that it's up to the community of maritime clusters to establish a roadmap so that then we can negotiate better with Brussels. And yachting, it's essential, I think. A lot of people here are amateur boaters. It doesn't seem that yachting has good press. Well, yachting has very good press with the broader public. Well, I don't know, I've got nothing against it, but it doesn't seem to be about the protection of beaches and landing slips. It seems there are more and more restrictions every year. Well, beaches, it's not the same as marinas, but French people know harbors very often. Every time I discuss with people, every other French person goes to a marina to look at the boats, not to sail, but because they love to look at boats. And what we've done with the government and the DG for fisheries and agriculture in France, so the Minister's Services, what we're doing, and the Secretary General for the Seas, with a committee, whatever its name, we've decided that yachting and boating should have a roadmap, an R&D roadmap, a development roadmap that is up to the challenge. So we got some working groups together at the beginning of the year. If I remember correctly, correct me, sorry if I'm wrong, but the roadmap should be signed by the French Maritime Cluster and associated stakeholders, and from then on, we should be able to get things in order and get ready to act. You are a tool for influence. Are you mostly B2B or B2C? Up to last year, indeed, we were just us together, so B2B. So when I arrived, I was coming from one of the components of the maritime economy. I was coming from the shipbuilding industry, Naval Group, and I discovered a lot of things, and I thought that I've been on this team for 20 years, but there are things that I'd never seen before. So I thought that it was high time for the French Maritime Cluster. I proposed that in the board of directors, and they accepted that immediately, that the French Maritime Cluster should talk to the broader public so that then the government could better understand how intense our needs are. So from September onwards, maybe a bit before that, we'll be present on social media to talk to young people, because that's also how it works. So you will be in talking in the press. Do you have counterparts in other major countries? In Europe, yes. Is there an American maritime cluster? Or is it just for them to assert their power? Well, this much I don't know, but Canada is trying to contact us very regularly now. Don't you answer? Yes, of course we answer. You're saying they've been trying to contact us. Well, they've been trying to contact us for green corridors. So routes, these major routes where we can have decarbonized energies. So, of course, we'll meet them in a few days. Any counterparts in Europe? Portugal, Luxembourg? Oh, wow. Yes, Spain, of course, and there are also countries in North Africa. There's a Tunisian maritime cluster. Some of them are French-speaking, and we help them coordinate. Others are European, and we also have European coordination. So for diplomacy, great. Thank you, Nathalie Mercier-PERRIN.